No place ever tested human endurance like the open sea. In the black silence of night, where icy winds carved through flesh and salt water soaked deep into bone, medieval sailors endured a cold untouched by fire, shelter, or modern gear. From the Baltic to the Indian Ocean, from Japan to the Mediterranean, every culture forged its own means to stay warm, not just in body, but in spirit. This is the story of how humanity endured the ocean's chill, where the cold was not only born of wind, but of isolation itself. The sea lived, it breathed frost. It swallowed warmth faster than any land could. Once a ship left the safety of the harbor, every man aboard knew the cold would trail them endlessly, through sunlight and storm alike. Salt water made everything crueler. It clung to wool, froze sleeves into armor, and turned the air into blades that sliced each breath. There were no waterproof coats, no insulated boots. A medieval sailor learned instead to deceive the elements, layering linen and wool, trapping thin pockets of air between fibers for warmth. They dried their soaked clothes above lanterns or beneath their own exhausted bodies. The ocean punished mistakes. One careless, drenched night could mean death before dawn. Every sea had its own kind of cold. In the north, frost crept along ropes and sails like white moss. In the south, nights grew thick with salt and solitude. But everywhere, the chill seeped inward, through skin and bone, until it became part of the voyage itself. To sail was to balance between breath and ice, between endurance and surrender. Yet the same cold that sought to kill them also tied them together, for no one else on earth could understand its silence like those who lived upon the waves. In the north, the sea was forged of iron and snow. Viking sailors braved blizzards fierce enough to swallow ships whole, and waters so cold they froze the oars mid-stroke. They trusted warmth to the craft of wool and the knowledge of generations. Thick tunics of sheep's wool, cloaks of seal skin, sometimes hoods lined with reindeer fur. Beneath, they packed moss or fleece for insulation, nature's own defense. At night, warmth became a shared ritual. They slept pressed close below deck, shoulder to shoulder, breath mingling in the dim air until the small wooden space grew faintly warm. In the center, a clay bowl of glowing coals burned gently, too weak to harm the ship, strong enough to keep their hand alive. During storms, they spoke little. Words froze before leaving the tongue. But their hearts beat in time with the waves, a quiet rhythm of survival. The sea forgave nothing, so they sang low songs of frost and thunder, reminders that life still moved within them. For the Vikings, warmth was never comfort. It was combat, every heartbeat of victory against the endless winter of the sea. The Mediterranean, though softer than northern waters, had its own kind of winter. The chill came not from snow, but from the wetness that clung to every rope and plank. Winds swept down from the Alps over Italy, Greece, and Catalonia, turning open decks into chambers of salt and ice. Sailors here fought cold with cunning, not strength. Their cloaks were woven from heavy linen and wool coated in beeswax, a golden armor against sea spray. Wax cloth repelled moisture, holding the body's warmth within. When storms raged, they tied ropes around their waists to keep the cloaks from tearing open. At night, they slept above the bilge, never on the open deck. A dry plank meant survival. Beneath them lay rough hemp or dry straw packed into linen sacks, forming a fragile wall between skin and soaked timber. The scent of tar, oil, and salt drifted through their dreams like another kind of sea. They drank spiced wine heated over faint embers, laced with herbs, rosemary, sage, or thyme, to keep their blood awake. It was no comfort, only medicine. Even on calm nights, the sea breeze could freeze a man faster than ice. The sailors of the Mediterranean didn't curse the cold. They bargained with it, turning craft and ritual into armor. They discovered warmth could be built from wax, from wood, and from will. In the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, sailors met a colder foe, the desert shadow cast upon the waves. By day, the sun burned the decks white. By night, The temperature fell like a blade, dropping more than 20 degrees. The chill was unseen, sudden, and merciless. Arab sailors wrapped themselves in long quilted robes called juba, stitched with cotton or camel wool. Around their heads and necks they wound turbans, not just for the sun's glare, but to hold the night's warmth. When the desert air turned sharp, their layers trapped breath close to the skin, weaving a cocoon of life against the emptiness of the sea. Small braziers of bronze or clay glowed between them, heating bitter black tea. The drink became their fire, each sip a spark of life, each shared cup a silent bond of brotherhood. They burned herbs, cardamom, clove, frankincense, not only for fragrance, but for the illusion of heat. The curling smoke wrapped around them like invisible blankets, carrying the memory of home across the endless dark. Under a sky brighter than any city, they found warmth in faith and ritual. The ocean's cold could cut through flesh, but not through devotion. For the sailors of the Indian Ocean, warmth was not mere survival. It was an act of belief. In East Asia, the seas themselves breathed frost. The Yellow Sea, the Sea of Japan, and the narrow Korean Straits, all cloaked in mist and wind. The cold there was dense, wet, and unrelenting. Salt fog soaked every garment, turning even dry cloth to ice by dawn. Chinese and Japanese sailors fought back with ingenuity and simplicity. They wore quilted coats packed with rice straw or layers of mulberry paper, cheap, light, and astonishingly warm. These makeshift insulators trapped air within their fibers, forming defenses as strong as wool. When the paper grew damp, it was swiftly replaced. Moisture, they knew, was a greater enemy than frost. On the grand ships of the Song dynasty, clay stoves were sealed inside iron chests to cradle glowing coals. The dim red light offered little to see by, but enough to thaw their frozen hands. Sailors gathered close, palms stretched out, their faces flickering like ghosts in the half-dark. In Japan, fishermen and traders, braving the winter seas, burned pine, resin in small pots. Its resinous smoke clung to their clothes, blending with salt and air, a scent of endurance. They slept huddled beneath rough hemp blankets, bound together by shared silence. For them, the ocean was both teacher and trial. The cold could never be conquered, only endured with patience, craft, and unbroken will. Every voyage was a meditation on survival, carved in frost and breath. The Baltic was the cruelest of seas, its waves heavy as metal, its air sharp as iron, its cold deep enough to split wood. Sailors of the Hanseatic League knew that in these waters, winter never ended. It merely changed form, shifting from water to wind. They dressed like blacksmiths of the ocean, wool shirts beneath tarred cloaks, gloves spun from wax yarn, boots lined with moss or hay. Every thread counted. A single loose seam could mean frostbite before dawn. Their ships stood like wooden fortresses, yet even iron nails cried out in the freezing air. When ice crept across the deck, they scattered sand to find their footing. Ropes stiffened into bone, and every task demanded the memory of fire. They warmed their hands around tin cups of dark rye beer, thick and steaming, or chewed smoked fish to keep their jaws alive. Food was warmth, motion was survival. They stored dried black bread and salted herring, dense provisions that endured the storms. Even laughter became a ration, save for the rare nights when fog broke and stars returned. The cold stripped the world to its simplest truths: breath, wood, and will. In the Baltic, warmth was not comfort. It was proof of existence. To light a coal, to share a drink, to feel one's fingers. These were victories, small but sacred, against a sea forged of steel. Along Africa's western coast, sailors faced a paradox. The sun burned the land, yet the sea froze their bones. The Benguela and Canary currents dragged icy waters north, chilling everything they touched. Nights on those decks felt like standing between two worlds, the desert's fire and the ocean's breath of winter. Berber and Swahili sailors dressed for both. They wore thick woven garments coated in palm oil or whale fat, natural shields against wind and water. Their sails carried the scent of smoke and salt, their cloaks of oil and earth, the perfume of endurance. They fought the cold not with silence, but with rhythm. When the air turned sharp, they sang. Hands struck barrels, boots stamped decks, and voices rose in layered harmony, creating warmth when none could be found. In those moments, the ship became a living drum, a heartbeat of defiance echoing through the waves. Fires were rare, too dangerous aboard wooden vessels, so they built warmth through motion, song, and work. Every movement, every rope pulled, every clap in rhythm became a flame. Energy was their fire. These coastal sailors believed that spirit burned hotter than any coal, that laughter and unity could kindle a heat the sea could not extinguish. On those cold Atlantic nights, warmth was found not in fabric, but in fellowship, in the shared pulse of life that defied the ocean's chill. Wherever ships sailed, through frozen fjords or beneath tropical storms, warmth was never only physical. It was human, collective, sacred. The sea tested not just the body, but the will to endure. Every crew carried its own way to keep spirits alive, through music, stories, and prayer. These were the invisible fires of every voyage. A single song, hummed softly in the dark, could chase away more chill than a dozen cloaks. A whispered story of home could thaw even the loneliest heart. Some ships carried a keeper of the flame, not a man with a torch, but one chosen to protect hope itself. His duty was to remind the crew why they sailed, to speak of dawn when the world was nothing but fog. The warmth he guarded could not be seen, yet it lived in every steady hand that refused to surrender. Many ships bore carvings of suns or torches on their prows, symbols of endurance against the cold abyss. They believed such emblems could call warmth and safety from the heavens above. For the medieval sailor, to stay warm was to stay human. Beneath the frost and fear, they carried the smallest, fiercest fire, the one that burns inside the soul and refuses to die, even when the sea takes everything else. Yet there were nights when no song, no cloak, no fire could save them. The sea, patient and merciless, always waited for its moment to reclaim its warmth. Many sailors met their end not in storms, but in silence. Frozen stiff beneath a pale dawn, their fingers still wrapped around ropes turned to ice. In the far north, frostbite crept quietly. A man would pause for just a moment too long, and his breath would turn to crystal midair. In the tropics, the enemy was not cold, but moisture. Endless dampness rotted skin, weakened lungs,